is being unfair to you, the reader, if they portray this as being subject to debate. It happened. Yes, you might mention that there are, fringe groups that challenge it, but it happened. Here's the controversial thing we say in the course. The global climate is changing. It's misleading for a journalist to say there's debate about that, when in fact there's not. What caused it, what we can do about it, those stories you want to be pretty balanced. But fairness means in this course, fairness to the evidence, fairness to the reader or viewer. Balance means sort of the old-fashioned, well on one hand, well on the other hand. In different kinds of stories, you would apply a different standard. So they look at that. They look at the languages, their sort of rhetorical languages. This is an opinion piece. A lot of opinion sneaks around under the guise of journalism, and now we make a further distinction that there's opinion journalism that's held to the same standards as journalism, and then there's this counterfeit stuff which doesn't make any attempt to verify, it just spouts. And then there's just pure bloviation, which is talk TV, talk radio. Just if I can think it, I can say it. So we're sort of trying to get them to make these distinctions. We talk a lot in the early part of the course about the taxonomy of information, which is this sort of pseudo-scientific parsing of what is journalism, what is opinion journalism, what's pure opinion, what's hype, what's spin, what's propaganda, what's promotion, because they get all of that online, undifferentiated, coming at them. So for the purposes of the course, again, journalism is defined by verification, independence, accountability. You'll hear us beat on that. In fact, what I tell the students is, if you fall asleep in lecture and I call on you, and you snap awake, if you just say verification, independence, accountability, throughout the course, you'll probably be close to right. So, that's the final, is taking specific pieces of the story apart, looking at it, examining it, saying, this story is not very reliable because the sources all have a dog in the fight, or whatever. Okay. How do we teach this course? Fresh examples are the lifeblood of the course. And so we spend a lot of time with Dustin rebuilding each semester the entire course with new examples of self-interested sources or the power of information or whatever. So the first third of the course basically is just the general, why is news important to a democracy? Why is reliable information important? What is the power of information? And what specifically is the role of journalism in American democracy, right? Then once we get past there, we start getting into what are the information neighborhoods? Which neighborhood are you in? Journalism, propaganda, whatever. It's a good metaphor. It's easy to visualize for students when they're wandering into the opinion neighborhood or whatever. What is news? News says so. Why do some things get a lot of coverage and some don't? That gets us a little bit into sort of the business of news and into the market pressures and who decides. Then we distinguish opinion from journalism. Then we get into questions of fairness, balance, and bias. And here's probably the signature lesson of this course, is that your own bias, and that's what we call it, own bias, can be as powerful as any actual bias in the media. So we introduced them to a lot of psychological research that demonstrates that people are literally incapable of taking in information that challenges their beliefs.
How about that DVD?
Yeah. They literally will warp, if they get information, they'll warp it to fit their point of view. And it's sort of terrifying how many different ways you can show people this. enemies. So we introduce students to this idea that the biggest enemy to the truth may be in your own skull. It's a great video that I keep thinking I want to use in lecture, but I think I'll end up just using it in recitations. So I come into a room full of people, classroom, I say, okay, you guys, from here over, you're the white team, you're the black team, we're going to watch a video, there's people passing a basketball, and you need to count how many times the white team passes, and you need to count how many times the people in the black uniforms pass. Are you ready? Go! And we run the video, it's like, I don't know, a minute. You get all done, you say, okay, white team, how many passes? 12, no, close, it was actually 13. Black team, 14 passes. Yep, exactly, 14, very good. How many of you saw the gorilla?
It is, and you know it's going to happen.
And it doesn't matter, this has been done nationally by psychologists. It doesn't matter the room, doesn't matter the demographics, education level, age, any demographic variable doesn't affect it. Only about a third of the people in the room watching the video will have noticed a person in a gorilla suit who walks to the center of the frame, jumps up and down 3 times, and walks out.
I've heard about this video. Yeah.
And it's stunning to students. The problem is a lot of them have seen it, so there needs to be a new gorilla video. The point is that you only see what you're looking for, and you can be primed to only learn what the person wants you to learn from a piece of information. You know this. Eyewitnesses are terrible. Just memory is incredibly inaccurate, incredibly susceptible to suggestion. If I say to you, God, Karen, do you remember the time, we were at church, and it was a church picnic, and they had this balloon ride thing, and you were crying like a little bitch. You were such a baby. But do you remember this balloon ride, and you're like, really? And then if I show you a photo of you hanging over the edge of a basket, if I show you that fake photo, that will become a memory of yours. And so I like to, I have my own private stock of those kinds of examples. We've got a lot of it built into the lecture. But it's really a good thing. We put the students through Project Implicit, which you should go play with yourself. It's implicit.org. It's a research project that a psychologist at Harvard has been doing for years. It measures the implicit, the sort of first level connections that you make between race, gender, age, body mass index, etc., and other characteristics. So you'll find a lot of the students will select the weapons thing to see if they associate race with weapons, or violence with gender, or intelligence with race, or there's all these different variables. And it's a little video game. They always want to quarrel with the methodology. The whole point of the video game is that as they change the framework, you slow down, and measuring the amount you slow down against the norm of everybody who's taken the thing so far. And it's a very good measure. And what it doesn't tell you whether you're a racist or a sexist or whatever. It tells you sort of what the loading is in your brain from the culture. We associate violence and weapons with race. We associate scientific ability with gender. We, all those things, whether they have a factual basis or not, it's part of everything we've seen. Ads, movies, discovery, just a little bit. The point of it is not to measure their racism, right? The point of doing Project Implicit is to open their mind to the fact that there's stuff in their head that they're not really conscious of, right? So that's a really cool week where we talk about cognitive dissonance, and we try to get them used to the idea that when they cry bias, how many times is it because the story is actually biased? How many times is it because they have a dog in the fight and they're upset with the story? Having been a newspaper editor, it's incredible, how I would sit there and answer the phone all day, and you'd get two different political points of view on the same set of facts in the story. So, okay, we do that. We come out of balance, bias, fairness. We go into evidence. We go into sources. We talk about the power of TV. We talk specifically about TV. And this is where I'd love to put some more radio into the mix. Some of the same issues, is non-diegenic sound manipulated? Does having music laid over change the meaning of the story? It absolutely does.
Oh, sure. We're always crying for that sound because it enhances it.
Yeah, and that sound is wonderful. And when you look at, like, Pointer took the same story about a young mother who's a helicopter pilot preparing to leave for Iraq. Took the exact same story and laid 3 different pieces of music over it. It totally changes how you perceive it. One's upbeat music, one's sort of sad piano music, and one's just sort of, guitar strummings, and it's incredible. So we talk about how you may not be aware of it. Just making them aware of the impact music has is huge. So we talk about TV. I actually want to change that lecture from the power of TV to the power of actuality, because I think what TV and radio bring is the soundbite, the actual event. The person is there, either live or in a taped piece, and they're collecting material from the scene. And photographs have done that, but a moving image is so much more powerful. And so we show, for instance, Tank Man, the photo of the guy in Tiananmen Square, and then there's Tank Man video. And you actually, a lot of people develop some sympathy for the tank driver because he's trying so hard to not run over Tank Man. Anyway, so we talk about power of images, power of TV. We spent a whole lecture on stills, just how photographs were manipulated and selected. So then we go into the deconstruction process, and we spend a couple of weeks pulling apart stories, practicing that. We've got a website that we built that's on Pointer Institute's NewsU like university. You might go play with that. It's just a cool thing to see. It's by Marcy McGinnis. It's one of the free classes at NewsU, and it's called How to Be a Smarter News Consumer. And you can spend anything from a half hour to 3 hours on it. I tell the students that 3 hours on that and you will ace the exam. It's just that close to what we do. So it's just worth telling your students, if you do nothing else, spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on there before the final. The last lecture is in flux, but basically where we're headed on it is the idea of if you see something, say something. And the idea is to say you now have all this sophistication about what makes quality information, what makes quality journalism. When you see it, praise it. When you see crappy work, critique it, intelligently. Explain why this is or isn't biased. Explain why this source is someone you should downgrade because of their obvious self-interest, or because the fact that somebody forgot to tell you they had a self-interest in this. So that's sort of the course in a nutshell. How we teach it. Hour and 20-minute lecture, heavy multimedia focus, visual, images, video, sound, the whole bit. We teach it in 2 structures. Are either Lourdes or Karen in a 90?
No.
Okay, so you guys are both in the large format, which is a big lecture of about 200 kids. Lecturer speaking, trying to engage the students as much as you can in a large lecture hall. Carry the microphone out, give it to them. They may give you a microphone to circulate through the room to get comments. It just depends on your lecturer's style. I use a Nerf football with a wireless mic in it, and I flip that around the room. And I'm actually a big fan of my little invention. It works really well. Because there are a lot of kids who might not speak, who will because they get to catch the football and throw that they can show it.
Right.
Show that they can throw it. And, you know, it doesn't matter gender. That was my big fear was, I wonder if this is going to be kind of a guys only thing, or, you know, if we pass that, we're past it. Girls can throw a football as well as boys, no problem, especially at North. But we try to engage the students a lot. Your role at lecture is to watch the lecture, figure out what it is they're taking in. Touch base with your students. At the end of lecture, usually there will be a homework assignment due. You'll collect them in a basket and you'll see that it is in fact, you know, Samantha Smith who's turning in the piece of work. So it varies by lecture how much involvement you'll actually have, but from time to time, because you guys each have expertise, if you're in my lecture, I like to have you stand up and talk about, you know, that thing that where your expertise is. It brings you into the whole group, and I like them to know that they're being taught by pros. Students remark on that really heavily. Just as a side note, students rate this course very highly on I would recommend this to another student. They rate the effectiveness of the teaching generally very highly, you know, either good or excellent, which is a good score. They bitch about the amount of work. You will bitch about the amount of grading you have to do. So I don't take my own advice. Every semester I fall behind, and every semester it's a mistake. Don't do it. If you're riding the train, get on the train, grade the homework. It's not hard grading. It's, you know, it's not time consuming, but there's enough of it that when it stacks up, it looks like an impossible pile, and you get daunted, and then you do it all last week. I don't know that that's necessarily unfair to the students, but I think it's better if they're getting feedback all along. And the biggest thing about it is that every semester that I've let it pile up, it shames me what I learned from grading that I didn't learn in class. You know, if you do the grading, you'll know who your students are. You learn a lot about them, not just their academic abilities. You just figure them out from reading what they're writing. Most of the assignments are a little short, 150, 200 word assignments. Read this, put yourself in these shoes. They're going to look a little juvenile to you, and some students complain about it, but developmentally what we're doing is we're giving them drill and practice on a certain skill, then they apply it. Then they do a related skill, then they apply it. Then, you know, so their abilities improve over the semester. We had a PhD from UCLA. Where's Jenny, a PhD candidate?
UCLA.
Okay. So Jennifer.
She's like an oracle. She knows everything.
Yeah. When I forget, she remembers. Jennifer Fleming is a PhD at UCLA in education. And she came out and looked at our pedagogical scheme, you know, the way we teach the course, looking through the lens of, you know, Dewey and some of the other sort of master teaching philosophers. And she was, you know, very complimentary in how we built the course. You know, that's Howie and Paul Schreiber, who in the beginning were the ones teaching. And they sat down with people who were teaching masters, and they put together this structure. It may be keyed a little low, you know, it's not a 200 level course, it's a 100 level course. But the students, the most common comment, I mean, the comment that comes up the most often about the course is, I feel like I learned stuff in this course that I'll use in my life, unlike almost anything else I've taken. It's very relevant. And so, to that we say, hallelujah. So, be patient with us. It's a little pedantic and methodical, but it has a purpose, so that when they get to deconstruction, they've drilled on all these skills, and we've drilled the hell out of them on these concepts, and they can do it themselves. You know, midway through the course, when we're doing the verification lecture, we take a chapter from Anderson Cooper's book about covering the tsunami in Sri Lanka. And we walk through all the verification steps that he takes. There's 24 steps. And you'll do that in class, and it's this, and then this, and then this. You have the students do it, and that's, but it's very good because then when they go to do it on their own, they've sort of droned their way through one. So, how do I do it? Oh, good. Your role is to fill in the gaps that the students didn't get from lecture. Should be a part of every recitation to say, what are you stuck on from lecture? You will get on the, did you put a new disc in or did you just steal
What?
the disc?
Forward.
The one that was in there.
That was one of the ones I just made this morning.
What's that?
I just made that disc this morning.
Well, why did it go away?
Oh, I thought you didn't need it.
I want it back. Stealer. Peter. So.
I thought I just wanted the final.
No, I want to play with all of the goodies. So, recitation is like 30 students. Lecture is like 200. So this is their chance to ask questions they maybe can't ask in lecture. And I said this to Karen yesterday. You will find that the best recitation is the one in which you do the least talking. And you'll get from us, in the resources folder for each lecture, you'll get a recitation guide, which gives you sort of the talking points, right, for that week's recitation. It's rarely enough. It's usually enough to fill an hour and 20 if you let the students speak. It's just a guide. It's just a lifeline. You worked late the night before, you're screwed. You've got the recitation guide. You can kind of fake it. I wouldn't encourage that. What you want to sit down and think about is, what are some provocative questions that I can ask that'll get students to this point? And we've also built some exercises, like we put Bill Keller on trial every semester. For the, Peter King wanted him tried for treason for the Swift Bank story. And so we put him on trial. And the students play roles. Their assignment is to come in with both sets of arguments built, which is a great precursor to the opinion lecture, right? Because they've got to think about rhetoric. But we build all that stuff, and then they have the trial. So we have some really good student engagement, student-led things built into the recitations, but to the extent that you can, you should think about how to do that every week.
And you know that's true.
What I did the first semester I taught this is I sat in on somebody else's class ahead of mine. So if you have time, the first couple of weeks, maybe you don't have time all semester, but the first couple of weeks, I would definitely say, make time to go watch the recitation of somebody else. Figure out what time's good for you, and I'll find you the right recitation to go watch. Because it'll just put your mind at ease about what the hell are you doing in the room. Stand there and there's 30 kids looking at you, now what do I do? If you can do it before, that's great. If you can't, it's still useful the first couple of weeks to come watch something, and then in the future you'll be, oh God, that's how he does it. How do you take attendance? Why do you take attendance? What about this? What about that? So you sort of work out your own deal. They're graded on attendance as part of their participation. So you have to take some form of attendance in your recitation. In lecture, the way we're going to handle it this year in some of the lectures, certainly in mine,
Have a great day.
is we're going to do a quiz at the end of the lecture.
Enjoy your weekend. See you next
3
week.
questions.
Yeah, I'll see you Wednesday.
1
Or Monday.
and 2 are going to be on
Yes, Monday.
Monday.
content from the lecture. The third
Oh,
question
invite?
is always going to be, what did you not get? What could we
Sorry, one last
amplify or
question.
explain better from this lecture? because we want to keep them engaged and, you know, understand that their questions are legit, valid. They should drive the course. So, lots of student conversation and recitation, as much as we can squeeze in lecture. We pile it on them.
How long is recitation? Was it an
Hour
hour
20.
Hour 20?
Yeah, go through an hour.
All right, see you.
Okay. Talking about sitting in. Now, one of your best resources is going to be the cadre of adjuncts and news fellows. All the news fellows have taught it at least 2 semesters. Most of them have taught it like 6 semesters now. John Anzalone, who is the most senior of the news fellows, I think he's taught it. Has Anzalone taught 8 semesters?
Yeah, he's been with us since 2007.
Yeah. Anzalone is a really fine teacher. Really a fine teacher. I would try and sit in on one of his recitations if you could, if the schedule works for you. You know, he's a historian, he's going to be a professor somewhere, and he's going to be a damn good one. So, as you know, he's the most senior guy, and the reason we've kept him this long is he's really, really good. The other guys are fine. You know, they're very good. I know for a fact that you'll learn things from watching John teach, so just ask him if you consider it. There's a lot of adjuncts who've taught it for quite a while and are quite good. Jack Milrod,
Yeah.
from Newsday, he's the design director at Newsday. I taught with Jack last fall, and it was such a joy because we had this group of us that were teaching it together, and they were all really creative people, and we had one of the philosophy TAs let us use his office over in the Harriman building, so we'd come in after a lecture and have a cold beer and talk about what we were doing next week. It was awesome. We called it the Boys Club because it happened to be all men. But you can learn a lot from, how are you teaching this? How are you doing this? Share materials back and forth. I absolutely want you to do that. In fact, we need a better process of sharing best practices among the teachers. I'll be sending you a survey online that you have to get back to me, because we build a set of bios of everybody who's teaching the course, and I want you to have that and them to have that early so you sort of know who else is teaching. It's a pretty remarkable group, you know, a lot of Newsday alums and people who've worked in a variety of media. We don't have enough TV, frankly. So you'll sort of see from that bio list, oh, there's somebody I'd be interested to get to know. You know, go do that. Other resources that are available to you. There is an office on campus, and I'm going to tour you down there. We're down here before you have to go see Nicole. It's called Teaching and Learning Plus Technology, TLT. And they are.
I'm sorry, I triggered an ACD song, DC song in my head.
Which one?
TNT, and I apologize.
No wonder you're interested.
I apologize. Okay.
Heavy
They are
metal,
kind
these-
of dynamite, though. So
It is, absolutely.
Not too far off.
All right.
Yeah,
These
TLT.
heavy metal girls are just too weird. So
I'll behave myself
TLT does
now.
two
All right.
things. One, if you're screwed up on any of the technology, they're really good about showing you how to use it. Everything from PowerPoint to Google Documents. They've got handouts. I'll show you all that. They run a thing called the Faculty Center, and their job is to make you a better teacher. They run workshops, which you're welcome to sign up for. They've got staff on hand who can usually help you pretty quickly. They are your best friend as a new teacher. I use them extensively. They have a whole online component, so you don't have to be here. They have some webinars that are available. They also have a whole series of master teacher videos where you can just watch somebody teaching their class and talking about how they teach their class and learn a lot from that about the persona you want to adopt. I don't think teaching is exactly performance, but there is an element of performance to it. And so I have a persona that I adopt in lecture that's a little different from who I am It's just a little more sort of on Ritalin kind of persona, but it's, you know what I mean, I'm very hyper in the lecture hall because you gotta keep these guys awake, frankly. I mean, it's pandering to some extent, but it's also how you teach. So you've got to decide who you're going to be in the classroom and be that part, be that person consistently. It's a very comfortable, good thing to have that in mind, you know, as you go. And watching these master teachers go. For some reason, they put me on there, not because I'm a master teacher, but because I use a lot of technology in the classroom, and they wanted somebody to talk about large lectures and the use of everything. So, what are the tools that are available to you? In most of the recitation rooms, you have a walk-up technology